Joe Perreta is a psychic medium currently living in Manhattan. Through his gift of mediumship, he seeks to offer solace, closure, and a connection to the eternal nature of the soul. Joe's unique abilities have garnered attention and recognition, placing him in the spotlight of notable platforms such as Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop.com, and he's certified by the esteemed Forever Family Foundation, a testament to his commitment to ethical and authentic mediumship practices. As a research medium, Joe has been a crucial participant in multiple scientific studies conducted at esteemed laboratories throughout the country. Notably, he has lent his skills to the prestigious DOPS at the University of Virginia, showcasing the intersection of spiritual insight and rigorous scientific inquiry. We're chatting with Joe today on Third Eye Sight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Of course, I'm so excited to chat with you. I've seen your name floating around, and the way I actually found you was I was reading Laura Lynn Jackson's book, and she mentioned the Forever Family Foundation, and I decided to look up the list of research certified mediums. You were on it, and yeah, I just looked you up, and I thought, oh, it's like cool, another young person like in their development and an established medium as well. So yeah, I wanted to talk to you. So tell folks like where you're based and just what your work is.
Yes, so I'm a psychic medium, so I talk to dead people, basically, in short. I'm in Manhattan. I'm in Midtown. I'm from New York, originally from Queens, and went to school on Long Island. So I'm here, but I do everything virtual. Since COVID, I was like kind of blessing in disguise. I was able to kind of do everything over. I always did phone, but I never did Zoom because I was like, I'm vain. So I was like, I don't want to look bad, whatever. But then COVID happened, and it kind of made me have to do stuff over Zoom. Now I love it. So I have like all my people from all over the country and stuff I see. But even if you're in the New York area, I don't have an office or anything anymore, so it's all over Zoom or the phone. But yeah, that's where you could find me on the internet, like everyone else.
I'm going to like go ahead and ask an interview question, like, because now you
Oh,
make me
all right.
think. I've done a reading once. It was a card reading for somebody on the phone, but I've never done a mediumship reading on the phone. So,
Mhm.
is there a difference to you between a phone call mediumship reading versus a Zoom one with video?
You know what? I will say it's actually easier for me over the phone than on Zoom. Not that it's bad on Zoom, but I'm so like I'm a clown as a person, honestly. Like I'm so not a serious person at
Join
all.
the club.
But with mediumship, I'm like such a hard ass. Like I'm very like strict about it because you have to be. And I like it over the phone a little bit better because you don't have the visual input. Like I'm sure you could relate. Like sometimes you'll be doing a reading and someone comes and they want to talk to their husband. And I'm like, oh, I have a lady coming through named Anna. And like before the words are even coming out of your mouth, they're like shaking their head no.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm like, you didn't let me finish yet. So it's like kind of nice to not have the visual input. Not everyone does it. Everyone's usually great, but sometimes you just get or people give away too much. Like the second you say something, they start to make a face, and I'm like, no, no, no. Like you're like, I don't want to know if I'm right or wrong. Like let me just finish, and then we'll figure it out. So it is a little bit, I think, better or more evidential. Like especially if you're like a skeptical person, to do it over the phone because it eliminates that question of like, well, did I make a face? Did my eye twitch? Blah blah blah. But as far as like being able to connect, it like I don't even need the person to be in the room. Like I'm sure it's the same thing with you. Like we don't even need to look at you. Like if your grandmother wants to talk to me, she's gonna find a way. You know what I mean? So as far as quality goes, it's not really that different. But personal preference, I like the phone because I don't have to worry that like the visual input or anything like that.
No, that makes total sense. And I definitely, when I'm reading at the beginning of a reading, at least, I notice I could do it subconsciously. Usually look to the side and not at the screen because I don't want to see their facial expressions. Because if I see them make a face like
Yes.
what the hell is he talking about? I'm gonna kind of lose my power. I
No, I
mean, that phrase
totally
is
get.
very overused, but yeah, that's how
No,
it feels.
100%. I was just gonna say that sometimes too. Like, I mean, I've been doing this for 10, 11 years, so I was gonna be honest with you. I don't give a shit what anyone like
Right,
says. I'm
yeah.
just like, whatever. This is what they're telling me. But you do have those days where you kind of, are like less in the zone. So, if someone's immediately like making a face like, what? Then I'm like, did I hear it wrong? Am I like you start to second guess yourself a little bit, and that you should never do that. When you're doing a reading, you're a medium for anyone listening who's does readings, tarot cards, whatever. You got to trust what they're giving you, especially if it's coming from spirit. Like the they will bring up stuff that makes sense to no one, and then 3 months later, everyone's like, "Oh my God, like that's so crazy." And I've had people swear to me up and down that something wasn't true, and then I'll get an email like a week later, and they're like, "You're never gonna believe this, but my grandmother's name was Rachel. I didn't know that she changed it like after the war." And blah, blah. Like people don't know about their lives. It's so crazy.
Or
So like, it's
yeah.
just you're right. Like you give your power away a little bit because we're only human, right? So you want to be right. You want to do a good job. You want to help someone. And when they're saying no, you get in your head, and then you're like second guessing everything. So the phone is not such a bad way to go sometimes if that's a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time on the podcast how the reason I mean I record my readings of people and I send it to them just so they have it as a memory keep, but also for that reason they may go back to it and think a month later like, "Oh wait, that's my uncle." And not a
Right.
crazy random spirit. Yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell us, how did your spiritual journey start? Did you know about this ability since you were really young? How did it work for you?
Yeah, so I'm Italian, or Sicilian and Napolitano, so like it's very witchy, just comes to the territory. So my
Wait, you
family,
said Napolitano, like
yeah.
Naples?
Yeah.
Okay, my
Hmm.
grandfather was born in Naples. Okay, cool
Oh, there you go. All
synchronicity.
right.
Cool,
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah. My paisan. Um, but so Italian people are super, into spirit and like, spiritual stuff. And I both my grandmothers read cards. So I grew up around it. I was only skeptical, and believe it or not. Like I was like, are we sure we're not just like all mentally ill or something, But we're not. Well, some of us, all of us, but in a different way. Anyway, so that's a whole
Other
other
podcasts,
that's
another
a whole other
podcast.
podcast. Um, but yeah, no, so I grew up around it. Like I was always very psychic as a kid. I dreamt about 9/11 before it happened, like in like crazy detail. It wasn't good. Like I was never dreaming about good stuff, right? It was always people dying or just stuff that I didn't want to know. I was 11, like why? I don't want to know that. It was so scary. So I shied away from it for a little bit. But the medium thing, I didn't fully. I can't say I didn't embrace it. I just didn't know. Like I was like, oh, like I believed in it. I knew it was there. I knew I had like some contact, but I was like, I can't do that. Like that's crazy. But I always had like this sneaking suspicion. There was like this voice that was like, no, 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 like try it. So every now and again as a kid, I'd be like, all right, let me like try to listen really, really hard. And I wouldn't hear anything. But when it was time, then it like, it really started to happen, just kind of all everything just fell into place. I'm sure it's, similar with you and a lot of other mediums when they decide you're ready to go, like time to go.
And how did you grow up, or rather, when you discovered your mediumship ability, how was the information being given to you? Because obviously, like each of us have different clairs, depending on which
Right.
one's stronger for the next person, and it could be different from me. It could be different for you than it is for me. So, how do they communicate
Right.
information to you?
Well, honestly, now it depends on the day. Like some days I'm like dictating and I just hear it all, and I'm like, "Oh, this is so easy." Like I don't have to interpret anything. But when it first started, I would say my strongest is probably claircognizance. Like I'll just know what to say, what to do. You know what I mean? Like it's just there as if I knew it already, which I feel like it's like the best and the worst one in at the same time, because like it cuts out the middleman. There's no interpretation there. It's just like I know this thing, but at the same time, it's like uh, it comes so out of nowhere that sometimes you miss it. Like you don't even realize it's happening. Like I'll use an example of something in a reading, and I'm like, oh, blah blah blah. Like just let's say if I move to like Dayton, Ohio, and they're like, oh my God, that's where I'm from, and I'm like, I've never even said those words out loud. Why would you know what I mean? Like sometimes, so it's easy to miss. But I'll get them in all types of ways, and it also depends on what's coming through, right? So like my symbol for Florida or the Carolinas, I'll see an orange for whatever reason. That's what I think it's because the license plate has an orange on it.
It's funny you say
Um,
that because
um,
when I first came across your name on the Forever Family Foundation list and I looked you up, this was like 2 years ago. Actually, I had reached out to you for a reading a couple years ago, but I ended up not
oh, good
booking
idea.
it because of
Uh,
like schedule and circumstances. But one of you had like a YouTube video where you were explaining the orange as a symbol
oh
and
yeah,
how it
yeah,
can mean
yeah.
different things. So I was just thinking of that and now you just said it.
Oh,
So
funny.
yeah, so like when like an orange comes to you, that could symbolize like the state of Florida, state of South
Yeah,
Carolina.
it's typically like honestly, it's my snowbird symbol, like for the most part. So I think of like Florida or like everyone from New York moves to the Carolinas or Florida eventually. Like it's like 50% of the population retires and they just like go down south. So I'll see that and I'm like, okay, like who lived in Florida, whatever. Um, But so that's like a common symbol, right? But if they're trying to show me something like really detailed that I kind of don't know about, they'll use more visual with me, I think. Because like I don't have, all right, I'll use a good example. This is actually a wild one. one day I was reading this woman and her grandmother was coming through and it was like really good session. The woman was so nice. Like grandmother was bringing up all this beautiful information, whatever. And out of nowhere, I'm just like, why is your grandmother showing me like a frog in a pond, but all I see are its eyes sticking out of the water? I was like, that means nothing to me. And she was like, "Oh my God, my grandmother called me and my brother Frog Eyes our whole life. That was our nickname." So like, if I saw the words frogs and eyes, I wouldn't have said like I wouldn't know to say that. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like sometimes visually they'll give me stuff to like because it's like so outside the box that I can like describe an image, whereas like I don't have an actual symbol for frog eyes or like a word that I'll hear. So it depends on like who I'm talking to. There's so many factors. You know what I mean? People are still people on the other side. So like I don't communicate the same as you do, as the same as someone else does. Some people are better communicators than others. When you die, that doesn't change. Like if you were a shitty communicator in life, it's not going to be easy for me. Like you know what I mean? Whether if you're
Yeah.
more quiet or if you're louder, or, it really depends. But I get them in all kinds of ways. All the Claires.
But that Frog Eyes example is, I love it when that happens because there are things that Spirit will bring up. I have no idea. Like, I brought up something recently, like some kind of field of some hobby that I don't know. I mean, a very straight dude kind of hobby that I know nothing about. And
Right.
when I brought up something that related to it that I knew in my frame of reference, and the person was like, "Oh my God, that's blah blah." I'm like, and I told them, "Listen, I know nothing about that. So if that must be why they're bringing this thing up." So
Right.
that's really cool when that happens because it's like even
Yeah.
shows spirit can work through someone like you, even if you're not familiar with exactly what they're trying to say. They're going to show it to you in a way that you understand.
Right. And that's such a good thing to bring up too, like for anyone listening that isn't sure about mediumship or doesn't know how it works, like it's not always going to be exact. Like if you grew up in like rural Japan and you're coming to me for a reading, I grew up in New York. Like we don't have a lot of the same like frames of reference, which doesn't mean you have to find someone just like you, but the information, they're going to give it to me the way that I would understand it to be able to get me to say the right thing. So like the I always laugh and I always say this like they'll use homonyms all the time. Like I could be reading someone who's a nail technician and they'll show me like nails that you would hammer on a wall. And I'm like, why are they what's the big deal with nails? And they'll be like, "Oh, I do nails." And I'm like, "Oh, I had the wrong." Like it's stupid, but it's the way that it works. Like it's just to get your it doesn't matter what I'm seeing, it matters what I'm presenting to you. So if they have to give it to me in like a really dumb way, that makes no sense, but you get it, that's all that matters is that I said the thing so you understand, right? Like that's
So
how,
spirit is like, let's dumb it down for
right.
them.
Like we're talking to this idiot, like we gotta get him to say like skeet shooting or whatever that sport is in this field, like they, like shooting those plates or whatever. And then, we'll make it work. But I think a lot of people get tripped up with mediumship because I think a lot of people think that we know what we're talking about when we're speaking, and we really are mostly confused half the time, like during a reading, like I don't know what the hell's going on.
Pretty much.
I am just the
Don't
middleman,
tell them the
literally.
secret, Joe. No, but it's true though. It's true.
Right.
I'm
And
very
they'll be
honest
like,
about that in my readings.
yeah, I'm like,
I'm like, this is like a, even though like we are, this is my belief, even though we are the channelers, we're the mediums, we're kind of like partnering up with the sitter to decipher
yeah,
what's coming through because
right.
they're the
Like,
ones that are going to unlock what the message is. I mean, we're giving it, but they're going to be able to understand in a way that they understand.
right. Like, I don't know
Well,
your life.
yeah,
I don't know what your rant means. Like, you tell me. But people expect because we have the ability that we know everything around it. And I'm like, they should only know that we're like just as lost half the time. Like, we're just, when it comes to specific stuff like that, obviously when there's messages or they're trying to like, coach someone a little bit spiritually, like that part of it, we're usually on, understanding and on board with. But when it's like some specific shit like frog eyes, I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, here, take it. You understand.
so you are, as I mentioned in the beginning, you are certified by the Forever Family
Mm,
Foundation, and I've read about them. I've gotten to know what the organization is about over the past couple years, and so they certify mediums through research studies. So
mm.
I don't know how much you're permitted to share about that process, but I'm really curious
Oh
to hear
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like what does being a research medium entail
So,
for
so
yeah.
technically, actually, so we're not Forever Family. I am a research medium actually, but not through Forever Family. So Forever Family doesn't conduct research, but a lot of like there's the Winbridge Institute from Julie Beischel. Like those are research mediums. There was the Veritas studies like back in the day with I think it was I forgot University of Arizona. I forget the researcher's name. I can't think of his name. Gary Schwartz maybe. but anyway, like those are research mediums, and a lot of them were kind of just grandfathered, excuse me, grandfathered in to Forever Family because they were already tested like in a lab. So they're showing
I
results.
see.
We're good to go. But Forever Family has their own what's the certification process where you basically when I did it, I don't know if it's they might have tweaked it over the years. I'm certified like almost 10 years already, so but I'm pretty sure it's the same. But I did one reading over the phone and you'd get the person's first name, whoever it may be. And they keep all their sitters anonymous. Like you don't you're not I'm not allowed to like as a medium I'm not allowed to know who the people are. I only know one of them because the person that I read ended up being involved in some way in the foundation, so I'm like, okay, I remember you. But other than that, like they just kind of train people and they come and go anyway. um so they're only allowed to say yes, no, maybe, or I need more information. They're trained to not give you anything, and there's one over the phone, so there's no visual feedback. And then you have to read four other people. Back when I did it, it was over Skype. There was no
Ooh,
Zoom. Zoom
throwback.
didn't exist.
What is Skype? I
I
don't.
don't know. She's very old. You know what I'm saying? But so we had to do those readings, and then the people are again trained not to give any information at all. Like they've gone through this whole process, and then they grade the reading. They score it not just for accuracy, because I mean I could be accurate and say like you have a mom, she has hair, she had 2 feet. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably going to be, oh my God, 100% right. You're amazing. So it's got to be not general as well, right? So they score it that way. There's like this whole scoring system, and then they use don't quote me on this one. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they tabulate the results statistically like three or five different ways, and then they put it all together. And then if your accuracy, like the mean number between all those ways is a certain level, like I don't know, just arbitrary, like 80% or above, and it's specific enough, then you could be certified. So it's like a whole, it's not just like you sit down for a reading with someone for 15 minutes and they're like, oh, that was great. Like, here you go. You know what I mean? Like
It's a
and
process.
and most
Yeah.
people actually fail. Like I didn't know thank God I had no idea going in. I wasn't nervous. I was like, oh, I'm gonna ace this test. It's amazing, right? I was like, no, I wasn't even doing it a year yet, and I was just like, young, whatever, I was 23. Like I had no no fear. I was just doing whatever. And then after I'm pretty good friends with a few mediums that are like on the board. They've like been with the foundation for a long time. And after they were like, no one passes that, right? They were like, it's like out of like if they have like 15 people that do it, like maybe one of them gets through. It's really hard. So not to like brag or anything, oh my God. But the my point is anyone listening, like it's not just some scam. Like they don't take money. You know what I mean? There's a lot of organizations out there that say they certify mediums, but you pay to get certified. This is not anything like that. It's purely charity. We donate our time. We don't get any compensation at all. Like if we book readings because people see us, that's a different thing. But but I do a lot with them. I do the radio show once a month. They have four different radio shows, I think, but I do the one on every third Thursday where I bring like another medium on that's certified,
I didn't
and
know
we
they
do.
do a radio show. I'm gonna have to listen to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, they do a
Cool.
radio show. Unfortunately, it's not on any like Spotify or anything. It's like an internet radio thing, so you have to go on their website, and it's like you'll find it if you look. But yeah, I do that like every third Thursday. But yeah, so Forever Family, like it's no joke. Like if you get tested and get certified and stuff, it's like definitely a good point on your resume because it means like you're not a crazy person or a charlatan or something.
Well, you should be very proud of that. And I think just the
Yeah.
fact that it's so meticulous, it just shows how serious they are about
Mm,
certifying the right people. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if you are like either familiar or you're connected to Laura Lynn Jackson, but I've been reading her book, The Light
Oh yeah.
Between Us, and she talks about the part of her journey where she went in to do this I think in person, on the phone, in person, and
I think when
she
she
was
got
very
certified,
nervous.
it was
Yeah,
still, I think Laura was either in the first or second round of certified mediums. And they used to rent out a conference room in a hotel, and they would have everyone
right.
like
Yeah.
fill out these pieces of paper. And so I know Laura, I'm actually in her second book. Laura writes about me a little bit.
Oh, I haven't
Uh,
gone there yet.
yeah, yeah, in Signs, in her book Signs. I'm in Signs, which
Oh,
I didn't know about, and I had all these people like coming for readings, and they were like, "Oh, like Laura Lynn told me about you," and I'm like, "She did?" Like I love Laura, like I knew she would, but And they were like, "Oh, like I read the book you were in," and I was like, "I didn't write a book, babe. Like, what are you talking about?" And and then I like finally one day was like, "What is this book everyone's talking about?" And I was like, "Oh my God, my friend put me in." Like, Laura's so sweet. Like, she's the way she comes across on like in interviews and in her book and stuff is exactly how she is. She's so smart and so sweet. I love, 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 love.
Yeah, I mean, I did read Signs first, and
Oh.
don't hate me, forgot that you were mentioned in the book.
No, it's no,
But
it's I'm not
that's
a whole chapter. I'm like it's like 3 lines. Like it's not a big a big deal, but I was mentioned, yes.
no, it's a great book, and she is. I've DM'd her for a little bit, and she's super sweet. And
Yeah,
yeah,
she
so I'm
answers. She answers on Instagram. She's
She
not like this
does,
like
and yeah, and I've been
yeah.
planning. Well, I won't say anything right now, but just because it's a public podcast, but I
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
But yeah, we've been in conversation here and there.
Oh, cool.
But yeah. So you mentioned earlier that the Forever Family Foundation, and I mean, you talked about that process. So that's different from being a research medium. So what is being a research
Yeah.
medium
So a
like
research
Woodbridge?
medium, so with Windbridge, let's say, so research basically it's just like they've used your ability for scientific research. So I actually did it. This I can't say too much about because the study didn't come out yet, but I'm allowed to talk about it a little bit because they're done doing the research, so there's no like information leakage or anything. But I did a study in oh my God, I'm blanking. In Virginia with a university there, and they like it was crazy. They locked me in a vault, and like I had these electrodes on my head, and basically it was just to not only see if you could be accurate as a medium, but to see what your brain's doing during the process. So we didn't get the full results yet, but I've heard some stuff, and it's actually really cool. And but it was intense. Like it was crazy. I was there for 5 days, and I'm not a morning person, so I had to wake up like super early and get like scientifically abused, which I didn't mind because they were so sweet. They were like the nicest people ever. But literally, it was like 60 electrodes, and they had to put like the gel in each thing and like hook it up to your head, and like my hair was a mess. It was so wild. But it was crazy because nobody knew the name of the person that you were supposed to read. So when the main researcher like came in the room, he had an envelope and he opened it and then read me the name, and it was the first time he had heard the name
How
too. So like,
dramatic!
right, like it was like so ins. I was meanwhile I'm like sitting there like in a chair with like, honestly I should have sent you. I might send you the picture after this. Um, this
I'd love to see
this
that.
interview so you could like put it in like the show notes or something, or like I'll send it to you anyway so you could see it, but if they would have posted because it really is ridiculous. Like I took a picture one day with like the research assistant that was there, and I'll blur her face out so I don't want to blow up her spot. But it was just so funny because it was like literally just all these I looked like a matrix, like no joke. It was just like this like machine attached to me, but the study was super intense, and it was like the first done of its kind. Because with Windbridge, they were I shouldn't say just because it's a super big deal, but they were trying to statistically show and scientifically show the accuracy of mediums and how you can get information. Like, there's no way these people are looking it up. We made sure they're not cheating and they're still being accurate and doing these crazy things. So, like, something's happening, right? This was that plus like the physiology of what goes on, which is like super cool. And I happen to know that they did find, I don't know exactly what they found, but I was told that they found like something super interesting. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm excited. I heard on a different podcast, the researcher who's involved in that said I think it's supposed to come out in October of this year, finally. But I did this before COVID. This was like 2019. And then COVID happened. So it got like pushed back like 2.5 years. It was a whole thing.
That's really cool, and it does sound like it sounds like a movie movie
Yeah, it's
script.
wild. I
Like
know it sounds like I'm
that's
lying. I know it
wild.
sounds like I'm literally making this
No,
shit up,
I
but I
but
swear to
I
God.
know these things
I have the
happen.
photographic proof.
I totally believe you, and just the fact that I don't know, having grown up myself, and I'm sure you feel maybe a little similar, just like being so interested in this field or skeptical about it, because I'm also there's an inner skeptic inside of me that wants the proof, even as a
Right.
medium myself. And to know that there are people out there that are so invested in learning more about this in the scientific community, like it blows my mind. I think it's so
Yeah.
cool.
It's getting a little bit more accepted too now, I think, because the materialist view like worked for so long, so well. But the more we're doing with like, well, AI, I think is just like bringing the conversation into like what is consciousness, whatever. But I think like with quantum physics, not to get too nerdy on this podcast,
No,
but
please, yeah, go at it.
I think that the further they get into quantum physics and the more they learn, like the less you can ignore the whole like role of consciousness in it. Because like the double slit experiment, like entanglement, like all these things are just like it's the further they get, like the less they can just compute. Like someone's eventually going to have to figure out why it works. And I really do think consciousness is like a big part of it. And I also think the whole like UAP alien thing too is like because there's been a lot about that in the news, right? And like I'm a big astrology person. I have a cousin who's a professional astrologer. Like Pluto just went into I don't know if you follow astrology, but Pluto
Here
just
and
went
there.
into Aquarius. Like Pluto in Aquarius is all about Pluto's taboos. It's like breaking down like structures. Aquarius is just if you know any Aquariuses, they're weirdos. Are you an Aquarius? Am I insulting you?
No, I'm not, but you're not
But
the
I
first
love
person to
them.
say that.
They're my favorite. My best friend's an Aquarius. Like I love Aquarius people, but they're the aliens. You know what I mean? Like so Aquarius is
I
all
can see
like
that.
just like technology and higher vibrations of the mind and stuff. And so those two, I think it's gonna be an interesting like 30 some odd years or whatever with Pluto and Aquarius. But that's a whole other again whole other podcast. Um, but yeah, I think that like just consciousness it's becoming more popular and it's less of a stigma because I've met a lot of people myself actually that are like in the scientific realm and stuff and they like will privately be so interested in what I do and they're like I can't publicly say this because I'll literally lose my funding and my job. And I'm like this is like the most important question ever. Important thing to look at and we're like not allowed to because we're going to lose funding. Like we just got to shut up and calculate. It's not right. Not to get on a soapbox or anything,
No,
but
it's
it
like
is
I think we all wonder whether we
yeah,
are atheists or a believer, whatever walk of life we are. We all wonder, is there something beyond the body, and do we live on? Yeah,
right.
it's a very human question to ask.
And there's like over 100 years of scientific research showing that there's something like there. No one's even saying like yes, it's 100% this, which I could say in my own experience, it's whatever. But there's a lot of it out there, and it's just like people don't want don't want to talk about it. But it's getting better, and I have to say, I feel like Gen Z, like that generation, is just they're helping. I love those little babies.
Well, I ask podcast listeners may be annoyed that I'm asking this question again
Mhm.
of a psychic medium, but um, what is your take on just like 20 I've noticed that 2020, I mean, my awakening with like my mediumship abilities was 2020, 2021.
Mm.
Do you find that to be the case amongst clients you speak to or just colleagues you speak to, that there seem to have been like, I guess maybe because of all the tragedy that might have triggered like a shift or an awakening? What's your take on that?
You know what? I think that whenever something really stressful or tragic or like ground shaking happens in the world or in people's lives, they usually wake up, right? Like you either succumb to it or you're forced to look at things. So I think on like a higher level, that was an opportunity for a lot of people to wake up, right? Like I think that was the point of it. And I remember I was doing a lot of Instagram lives, which I kind of have to get back to. I fell off a little bit, but that's besides the point.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like so bad about it. But I remember I was talking a lot to people about it, and I was like, listen, like my guides were telling me this was an opportunity to like for us to wake up, like whether it be a spiritual awakening or just wake up to your own life and the things that you don't like, but also like on a bigger picture, they said it was sort of, and it's gonna say this sounded scary to people, but I took it as a positive. It was like sort of the beginning of the end, not like the end of the world, but like the systems we've been, working with all these, however many years the end to a lot of negative stuff in America, like good and bad. Like we're definitely in, I think, the middle of like a really big shift and transition that I don't think a lot of people fully realize yet. It's unfortunate people don't see it until things get really bad. You know what I mean? Or they let things get kind of, dicey. Which again, I could go off on a tangent and talk about that too, but I think that that's election year. We'll be seeing it. Don't don't you worry, all the listeners out there, you'll know what we're talking about. But yeah, I think that was a definite side effect of that like shakeup that people were supposed to wake up and but you know what I think too, like my awakening was sort of like 9/11, right? Like I was always like, curious about it and stuff, and then I dreamt about it and I immediately was like, okay, I know I'm psychic. I know that I'm connected to something else. Like I just had that knowing after it happened in the dream. And I have talked to tons of people over the years who said the same thing. Like I know several mediums that were like my first crazy experience was right before 9/11. So I think when these major, major world events happen and these big tragedies and it's loud enough that it can like wake people up. So I think that was the point of 2020. It depends person to person if they took advantage of the opportunity or not. But it sounds like you did, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, honestly, it's just funny how things just fall into place. I was curious about tarot cards, and that's the first thing I went to and wanted to study them because I had a
Hmm.
friend who gave me a really great tarot card reading, and then it was the middle of a card reading that I spirit walked in and gave messages like, wait, this is not a typical card reading.
You're like, wait,
um,
what?
yeah, but going back to what you said about even like Teresa Caputo, I remember reading her book and she talks about this in past shows episodes of her show that 9/11, like she always had this ability, but 9/11 was what got her to do it as like work.
Right.
And even like I've spoken to mediums who have been very openly sharing that a trauma in their childhood or in their
Mm.
adulthood, like that triggered something, whether it's a trauma inflicted by another person or even like pregnancy, I've heard can
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah, yeah.
activate. So yeah, it's interesting whether it's on the small scale of an individual life or on a societal scale, how these things can,
Right.
I guess, bring us back to something, right?
Right. Well, I unfortunately, I think it's just like part of the human condition. Like we don't grow unless it's something super stressful or tragic or traumatic. Like we're just like not about moving and if we're comfortable. It just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Okay, fine. You could argue every now and again you get a new promotion or a new position and it forces you to grow. Fine, whatever. But for the most part, it's usually a stressful. I mean, growing pains, right? That's a saying for a reason. So I think that that stuff, it happens for sure. So I'm sure you're part of that soul group that was like, all right, COVID, we're waking up. It's time to go. But can I ask you a funny question, not to interview you on your own
No, yeah,
podcast,
sure,
but
sure.
how old are you?
31.
So COVID, you were like 28 and a half, right?
Yeah, that
29?
sounds right. Yeah, but
That's
I
your
can't do
that's
math, but yes.
that's your Saturn return.
Yes, someone told me that. And
Yeah.
so that makes sense. That
I
makes
was
total
I
sense.
it's fun as we're talking, my guides were like his Saturn return, and I was like, okay, so he was probably like around 29 when COVID happened. So yeah, Saturn return. I guarantee in your chart that's all about your spirituality, and you had to like wake up to what you were supposed to do in this life. So it's a good sign when you start doing something during your Saturn return because it means that it's what your soul is supposed to be doing.
And I feel it. I totally feel it. I feel like I'm definitely coming more into my own authenticity, and it's with the help of this work and having a spiritual mentor. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And
yeah, of
thank you
course.
to your guides. Appreciate it.
Yeah, they're nosy as hell. They're always involved.
All good. It's welcomed here. Now, do you have with whatever details you can share, and of course keeping any confidentiality you have to, is there a moment you've had in a reading with a client or a sitter that has really like stuck with you as really memorable?
Oh God, there was so many. Memorable, like impactful to me, or memorable, like a crazy thing that like I came out like like
Um,
validation or something.
Either. I'll make it very difficult for you.
Okay, all right. Can I share two? I'll share one quick
Yeah,
one,
of
and then
course.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, all right.
Yeah.
So one, this is just like such a silly thing, but it was such a crazy validation that like if I ever write a book one day, I have to put it in. I don't even remember the woman's name, so she's probably gonna want to murder me, but I'll put it in anonymously. So her dad had passed away, and I forget. I had either already brought up that her brother lived in Oregon, or it came up at the same time as this other thing. But either way, I was like talking about Oregon or whatever, and did you ever play Zelda?
Very little.
Okay, so in this is so silly, but again, it's your own frame of reference, right? So as a kid, I loved Zelda on N64, and you could catch fish in a jar, like in the game. So they literally showed me like the image of the fish like in the jar like from Zelda. So I was like, what the hell could this possibly mean? And then I was like, oh, like the fish is packaged. And then I saw a factory. So I said to her, I was like, does somebody live in Oregon like near a fish packaging plant? Now I'm like, this nuts, right? So she looks at me and she's like, the last picture my father and my brother have together, my dad is holding up a bag with a fish in it. And they went to the factory where they packaged the fish to like send it around the country. And it was like their last picture together. And they just like, he took his dad because he was visiting and he was like, oh, my dad would be interested in this. And he like, I guess they like did a tour, like this is where we raised the fish, this is where it was like a tuna plant or something. So I was just like, what are the like what? You know what I
Wait, that
mean?
was the last picture they took
Yeah, and
with.
she's like yeah, so she's like, I know the like I'm thinking of the picture right now. It's the last picture that my dad and my brother have together, and like they're like, I guess they let them take home I don't know. It was like it was wild.
That is wild. That's
I was
really
like, wow,
cool.
that was like a crazy one. Because I'm sitting, I'm like, fish packaging plant's real? And then I'm like in my head going through, I'm like, well, they have to like vacuum seal like the tuna bags and like the cans. So like I'm like trying to like rationalize even saying it out loud as this woman's probably staring at me like, is this guy like out of his fucking mind? Like, what's he doing here? But anyway, so that was a really good validation. I love that one. That was like I just because it's so silly but so specific and so out of my realm of like, you know. But no, I will share too. So one of the reasons why I actually like decided I was gonna do this, like really, really focus on being a medium. Um, when it started, I needed a lot of proof, so I was like not seeking it out. I was like, if you guys are there, you need to find me and like show me that you're here because I'm not gonna try. And they really like made me eat those words because I couldn't go anywhere without like making someone cry, whatever. So one night, all my friends were out. This is when I lived in Long Island. I was like 20, I was like 23, 22, 23. I was living with my parents, and my friends were like, come out, come out. And it was like this bar in this neighborhood that I was just like not in love with. It's like very sloppy. Everyone gets super drunk. There's like always fights. I'm like the one gay guy there. Like, uh, you know what I mean? Like, I gotta like watch my
Not that
back.
gay sigh.
You know what I mean? Like nothing against, my heterosexual people, but I gotta, I don't know, you get drunk, I'm gonna get called a faggot or something. Like I was like, I gotta watch yourself, whatever. So I didn't love it and whatever. I just didn't feel like going out was really the real reason. So they finally talked me into going. So I'm there and I'm like counting drinks. And I'm like, why can't I get drunk? Like this is meanwhile, I was like the tiniest little twink ever at this point. I was like 120 pounds. So I was like, I should be in the hospital. Like, why am I not drunk? And all of a sudden, this girl walks in, and it my friend's boyfriend's new girlfriend, right? Like this, I didn't know who the hell this girl was, and she was young. She was like around my age. So I'm like, oh my God, this girl's like mother passed away. I know it. Like I have her mother here. So I'm like, all right, let me mind my business. Like I didn't want to come here as it is. Like now I gotta work. You know what I mean? And the mom was like, tell her it's okay that she had an abortion. So I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, I gotta walk up to this stranger and be like, your dead mother is here, and she said it's okay that you had an like at a bar on a Saturday night. Like nobody wants to do this. So I said something to my friend about it. My friend was like, I'll go feel her out and see if she was like, I'll just tell. I didn't say anything about the abortion thing. I just said something about the mom. And my friend like gave me a look like she knew her mom had died. So she was like, you're onto something. So I was like, oh man, okay. So whatever, the girl comes over and I was like, listen, I know this is like so strange. She was like, no, your friend told me I'm super open to it. She was like, I'd love to hear from my mom. So I'm like saying whatever. And then I was like, your mom told me that you had an abortion. She really wants you to know that it's okay. This poor girl, I felt so sorry, like for her, not in a mean way, but she like started crying and she was like, you have no idea. She was like, I had an abortion. Like, she was like, I've been dating this guy a few months. She was like, right before I met him, I had an abortion and I didn't tell him. And she's like, I've been feeling so bad about it. And she was like, I've been thinking about like taking my own life because I feel so bad. She was like, and I keep saying to myself, I wish my mom were here to just tell me like it's okay and I would feel better about it. She was like, so you telling me this? She's like, I'm fine now. She's like, I know it's gonna be okay and like I can get through it. So that and like I read her and like other stuff came up, whatever. It was a good reading. But this was all like 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Her boyfriend was looking at me like he wanted me dead. Because I don't know if it was like jealousy or he was like, what's this guy telling her? Because I think I told her that he was cheating on her too, and he was. But that's just some other like hot
Oh
tea.
shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I ruined a whole relationship that night. I should have stayed home. But no, all jokes aside, after that night, I was like, you know what? I was like, if I can help people, like this girl was in such a dark place, and in 15 minutes, like her mother came through and made her feel so much better about it. I was like, who am I to not give this to people? Like, that's so, like, if I can help someone with this, why would I not? Like, it's so selfish not to. So from that point on, I was like, all right, I'm game. I'm fine. I'll do it. And I started doing it like full time. Well, not full time, but um, a few months later, I like started charging. This was still in my like, let me make sure I'm not schizophrenic phase.
Oh
I
yeah, been
also,
there.
yeah, I read my therapist too, our first session, which worked out because she knew I wasn't nuts. So that was also a fun one. But yeah.
So that oops, just bumped into my mic. That is yeah, that's an amazing story because well, I actually want to ask you. So you said you had been drinking. Do you find that when you are under the influence, is the ability like increased or does it decrease? Does it have an effect on you?
So it depends on the amount of drinks.
Heard.
If I've had like one or two glasses of wine, I'm a little loose. Forget it. I'll read anybody. Like, and it'll be good. If I've had too many, it's like I'm numb, emotionally, mentally. Like it's just there's no like she's stupid at that point. Like I can't do anything. But I have noticed actually if I like like if I'm out like all night, whatever, and then at the end of the night I'm like ready to like I'm like drunk. I have been able to read people, and it's not so bad. So it's funny. It's like at the very beginning of it, you kind of can when you're still with it, or if I'm like completely gone, like I every now and again something will like slip by my radar, if that makes sense. But that like most of the middle ground is I'm useless. Like don't even ask me anything. It's, you're like I'll be wrong. Like I'll admit it.
Yeah, I've always wondered because there are some mediums, a podcast I listen to hosted by mediums who talk about,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that sometimes, I mean, it is an inhibitor. You know what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say?
Yeah.
Again, it brings down your inhibitions, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're just gonna say whatever when you're under the influence, like a little
Yeah.
tipsy. I know for me, like I'll say whatever when I'm just tipsy. So I've
Right.
never given a
Right.
reading tipsy. I try to.
Try it. No, I'm kidding.
I'm like, I mean, if it happens, it happens. But I'm not like,
Right.
I'm getting tipsy tonight to do some readings at
Yeah, no, no. Oh
Ninth
my God, I
Avenue
would
Saloon. No,
never.
yeah, yeah.
Right. I'm gonna get drunk and go read people. No, 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 none of that. I have noticed too with with certain drugs, they will some of them will open you up a little bit. Like I remember one time, I'm so bad with drugs. Like I'm not a good. I panic. Like I'm not. I'm just not. Um, so me and weed have had like a complicated relationship. Because I'm a bad sleeper, so it does help. But like I gotta anyway.
No, I've
So
done it for that reason too.
yeah,
So yeah.
I didn't smoke for like 10 years, and then one day I was with someone I felt really comfortable, and I was like, you know what, like I will. So I like took a hit of like a vape pen, and I was in Washington Square, and all of a sudden I was seeing auras. Like I was literally like seeing everyone around. I was like, oh, you're the never happened again, but it just like opened me up in like a weird way, and it was funny because again, I'm all about validation, right? Like I'm, whatever. And it was funny. I had told this my friend who gave me the pen. Her boyfriend was there, and I was like, "Oh, I forgot what the colors were," and I like described exactly where, whatever. And they both kind of looked at each other and were like, and I was like, "What? Like, is that bad?" And they were like, "No." They were like, "We just went to some like metaphysical fair the other day, and he got his aura picture taken, and it was exactly how you described it." And I was like, "Oh, all right." I was like, "So weed is good. Okay, it's natural. It's a plant. We love it." But I've never tried to like smoke and do a reading. I would never. I feel like it's too much pressure, and I would like panic. Like I just, when that happens, I just want to go to bed or like eat ice cream, and that's it.
Same, yeah. So wait, so
Yeah.
after that vape experience, did you like try to vape like I can't see anything?
Well, no, it's funny. So then after that, me and my best friend at the time, we lived together, and she she loves her weed, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna smoke, and I like kept trying to like have it happen again, and I was like, this, I'm just getting stupid now. Like this is not, it's not working. That was a one-off experience, but it's funny because if you do read like some of like the old like ancient yoga texts and stuff, they'll talk about like getting like the cities, like the powers, right, from yoga, and they said there's shortcuts with like certain herbs and drugs and stuff. And I find it interesting that like that happened with me when I smoked weed, and I've never done shrooms because I'm afraid to hallucinate. But I've heard that with shrooms it like dampens the brain activity rather than like misfiring. So I kind of feel like it just like turns off certain parts that get in the way of intuition and stuff like that. So I'm not condoning everyone go out and like drop acid to like talk to dead people. It's not the way it works. Please do not. Disclaimer, don't sue us.
Appreciate that disclaimer.
But there is something to it. I think it just kind of changes your consciousness, and sometimes you like click into something a little bit more spiritual rather than just like the munchies. You know what I mean?
No, I've actually been meaning to find somebody to talk to. Like I personally don't have an interest in psychedelics or doing them, but it doesn't mean I'm not interested in learning like people's experiences on them because
Yeah.
I've heard from people in my life and also just reading stories of folks who've had spiritual, very deep spiritual
Mm.
experiences taking some psychedelics or just shrooms. And yeah. So before we go down that rabbit hole, I do want to ask you a question because
Yeah, yeah.
I want to make sure I respect your time. But
Oh, of
before I get
course.
to the last question, I want to ask
Hmm.
you, do you do this full time?
Oh yeah, that's my only job.
And so how have you navigated when people ask you like, what do you do? And then oh, I'm a psychic
Oh,
medium.
I have such a good story for you. So last night, I always
It's
tell
like I'm psychic. I'm here for the good stories.
I always tell people I'm not about like people are always like, oh, when you date, you tell everyone right away, and I'm like, yeah, I want to weed out if someone's gonna be an asshole about it. Like I'm not wasting my time. What if I start to like you and then you're not into it? Then I gotta like reprogram? Absolutely not. But anyway, so last night, there's this medium. Her name is Keisha Carr in New York City. She's so funny. She's so good. She performs Sunday nights at Industry. If anyone's interested, I'm gonna plug her because she's so good. And one of my really good friends, it's his favorite drag queen. So we he was like, oh, he was sleeping over last night. He was actually with me all weekend, and he was like, let's go see Keisha. So I was like, all right, yeah, yeah, let's go, let's go. So it was kind of dead at the bar, so we were like sitting in the front, and I like never sit in the front of a drag show because I know better. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to like get abused. There was no one there, so I was like, oh, whatever, fuck it. So we were like sitting up there, and like my friend is very handsome. He's got like these like big arms, whatever. So obviously she like came right over to us, and she's like, "Oh, what's happening over here?" So it was with me and two other, my friend and this other guy, and she was like, "Oh, who has the most interesting job over here?" So I was like, "Oh no." So like one of the people I was with is a nurse. My other friend is in tech. He does cybersecurity. So she like looked at me and she was like, "Well, what do you do?" I was like, yeah. I was like, Greta, I'm a psychic medium. This went on for like 10 minutes. She was like grilling me. It was so funny. She was like asking how much I charge. Like it was honestly, it was like she was so funny about it and like so endearing and like respectful and nice. But I always, but I've never that's never happened to me before. Like I've never publicly announced it like to a room that wasn't there to see me talk to dead people. So I thought that was kind of funny, but the bar was really cool about it actually. But I did leave right before the show ended. So I was expecting to get harassed about it and I didn't. So I was kind of happy about that because I was like I don't want these random like drunk, you know, people coming up to me and be like, "Do you see me like getting a new job?" I'm like, it's 1 a.m. on a Sunday, babe. I'm trying to go to bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's that's hilarious. And also like in a room full I mean, I've been to industry. I used to go to industry a lot, and it's like that's a lot of people to say that in front of, and that's so. I asked
Right.
you that question because I think there are some folks listening who are on their psychic journey, and even myself, like I'm starting to open up to the idea of like when I started dating again last year,
Hmm.
and going like I used to go like speed dating and like you put it on
Hmm.
your little profile thing and like yeah, publicist and psychic medium, and it was a good conversation starter. And the
Yeah,
people that are not
people,
interested in it, it weeds them out, like
right,
you
like it
said.
really weeds people out. It really does. Like I have it on my Hinge every I mean, well, I don't have it on every profile, if you know what I'm saying. But but on the ones where you're actually speaking to each other. But no, if people ask me, I tell them I'm so not about like trying to hide it. There's no it's who I am, there's no point. That's like, you know what I mean? Like it's like lying about like your race or ethnicity or something. Like it's who you are. You just have to own it. But I get why people are a little bit apprehensive about it because especially in New York, honestly, like everyone, I mean, listen, this is my city. I'm from New York. New Yorker, born and raised, like third generation here. I get it. Like it's very much about money and, like career driven and a lot. I've had people be like rude enough to be like, "Oh, and you like pay your rent doing that? Like that's your own, you know what I mean? Like implying that like I can't pay my bills." And I'm I can. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. So it is a little bit, it's not like we're in LA and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, like my my PCP is also a medium." You know what I mean? Like LA,
And a
it's just
shaman and
right. Like, honestly, anywhere else, even like when I'm in Italy, because I go to Italy a lot, I'm actually getting my citizenship so I can escape
I'm
if I
so
if need
jelly.
be.
Yes, I tried to do that, but I couldn't. But
Oh
yes, that's
no, yeah, yeah,
amazing
yeah.
though.
I can't wait. Actually, my mom just told me she got a package today from the people. So anyway, sorry. Just remembered. So fingers crossed. If you need to escape, I can help you.
Thank you.
But even in Italy, they're like kind of, super open to it. I think New York is like kind of a weird little pocket of the world where people are like, "What?" They're like, you're not like in finance." You know what I mean?
I mean, I also think it's like mostly an American North like US thing
Yeah.
because like even in Latino, I'm part Latino too.
Hmm.
And like I said before we had our call, like this Zoom call podcast episode,
Hmm.
I'm a lot of things. But
Hmm.
I mean in Latino culture in different Latino cultures, I can't speak for all of them, but I know
Hmm.
my dad's Peruvian culture, very Catholic country, but there's
Hmm.
definitely a belief in mysticism and like
Uh,
witchcraft. Like you don't mess with witchcraft
no,
because it's
100%.
real. Not you
Yeah.
don't mess with witchcraft because it's fake. You don't mess with
No.
it because it's real.
Because it's real. No, 100%. Honestly, like most of the people that I like vibe with are usually not from America or like their parents are first generation because they they just get it. Like they understand that they're not just so like left brain like whatever. And you're right. Like a lot of people from like South America whatever. Like it's not even a question. I'm like, do that, and they're like, "Oh, so is my aunt." Like, and then we can just like move on and talk about whatever else. Like it's not like whenever I try to go on a date with like a white boy, and not that I'm not white because I am, and they'll be like, "Oh, like so, like how'd you start and blah blah blah, and how much money?" And I'm just like, "Can we talk about something else?" Like I don't know, like I don't know.
No,
It's kind of
it's
funny.
definitely cultural, and I feel like I mean
Yeah.
there's that like WASP, white English accent, like
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
price.
yeah.
I feel like it's the Protestantism because Catholicism, to me, Catholicism, my opinion, I'm not Catholic anymore, but
Mhm.
it's a mystical
It's a
religion.
little witchy. It's a little witchy.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, turning bread into a body and then wine into blood. I
Hello.
mean, if that ain't
Right.
witchcraft,
We're
quote
drinking
unquote.
blood every Sunday. Come on. Like, and they actually believe that it is the blood. It's not a representation. It becomes it. Like that's the belief. So I do agree, but I think it's an American thing too. I think it's like the ideal, like the ideals in America, and just like you're supposed to focus on this and blah blah blah. And I mean, I can get into a whole thing about it. I think it's also just like the patriarchy. Like men are supposed to just like not feel and all that's bullshit and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like it's a whole thing. I could again another podcast another
No, I could talk forever with you. So the last question I want to ask you, if there
time.
was one myth that you could like debunk right now about the work you do,
Mhm.
what would it be?
Ooh, it would be that I guess we kind of talked about this that we don't really know everything, but I'm going to say it again. Like people who find out I'm a medium, if they're not super into it or don't understand it, their first response is usually something along the lines of like, what are the lotto numbers? Or like, or I'll ask a question like, oh, shouldn't you know that? Like you're a medium. I don't know when medium became synonymous with like God. Like I am not claiming to know everything. I don't know shit. You're lucky I can help myself survive. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like everyone else. We are normal people, right? Like okay, fine, maybe not normal. What is normal anyway? But you know what I'm saying. That we're not that different from everyone else. So when you hear someone say that they're psychic or they're a medium, that does not they're not claiming that like this is not Minority Report. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't know everything that's about to happen. Like it's so crazy. So like that I think is the biggest myth. And if people understood, because they'll judge on that basis, right? Like, oh, well, if you were really a medium, you would know like you would know what my job is, or you know where I grew up. And I'm like, no, if I were really a medium, I could sit down with you and give you evidence that your grandmother still exists. Like that's what we do. So that would be the biggest myth is that we don't know everything. That's not the claim we're making. And if you do meet a medium who's saying that they know everything, they're probably don't know. They know less than we do. I'm just saying. So yeah, that would be the myth, I think, personally. That annoys me the most.
I just answered like it was like a Q&A for some like a Queen's Gazette, I think, some local
Oh,
newspaper. I should treat you with respect. They were very nice. I think it was Queen's Gazette. It was like a Q&A,
mm,
and one of the things I said was if any psychic or medium says that they're 100% accurate all the time, don't go to them.
right. They're lying. 100% lying.
And the other day, someone actually joked with me. I told them I'm a psychic medium, and they
Hmm.
said, "Oh, do you tell me the lottery numbers? That if I knew them, I wouldn't give them to you."
I say the
Like,
same thing. I'm like, do you think if I knew the lottery numbers, I'd even be talking to you right now? I would be on my own island. You wouldn't even know who I was. Forget it. Bye. Like,
exactly,
so
exactly.
silly. It's such a silly thing.
And I think also something that I'm only like 3 years into my development, and I think something I'm
Hmm.
learning very slowly is like I can do this work and also like experience heartbreak and also like have my bad
Right.
days and like
Right.
and I think sometimes I grew up with this idea that a psychic medium, based on what I was watching on TV, which is super edited and whatever I was hearing, like a psychic medium who's a good channel has everything like all their shit together and they don't like a breakup happens, it's like okay,
No.
that's how life goes,
No, babe.
love and light.
If
Like, no, it's okay to be human.
if I were as petty as I really want to be, the shit I could tell you right now about the mediums I know, you have no idea.
Oh,
Like,
I have met some. I have met some. That's the interesting thing too. Is like when I delved into right when I was delving into this work, I had known a medium, and like I've met mediums that they're talented, they're great, but
right.
they got work to do.
A lot. I know a lot of mediums who are not that love and light type of, and you don't have to be either. Like it's you don't I mean it kind of comes to the territory a little bit, but you
there's
don't,
there's like a toxic positivity fine line, right? It's
that I
like,
don't love,
yeah.
yeah, but I don't even mean that. I just mean like they're just you know what some of the I will say some of the best mediums that I know actually are like incredibly good, wonderful people. But there are some who are like really, really good that I've interacted with, and I'm like, I cannot believe that the dead people chose you. Like, I'm like, what did your name get? Is there like another one and they got the wrong one? Like they had the birthday wrong? Like what's happening? Like you are awful. But no, you know what? But to your point, like we don't have it all together. We don't. I mean, I would be lying to you, completely lying to you, if I said in my because I'm single, right? Like so, like in my dating life. I am very, very, very rarely wrong about someone that I'm gonna date. Like I'll meet someone in a second and I'm like, I know I'm gonna love you. I don't know if we're gonna be together, but like I know, and I have not been wrong yet. Like I sort of got like I always know, but I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if we're gonna be together, or like I just know that like that person, I have to know you, or there's like something about them, and then I'll sit and talk with them, and I'm like, oh, of course you have this belief, or like just like I knew you were gonna be wonderful. You know what I mean? Like you just and then there's people that like you meet where you're just like everyone's telling me we're supposed to like meet, and I'm like, no, not for me. So I'd be lying if I said that. But we don't know, we don't have all the answers at all, and I make mistakes all the time. That people in my life die. I don't know what's coming. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that information. But you're right. A lot of people think, and I thought that too when I first started. I was like, oh, like I have a cheat code on life. I'm gonna know everything, and I found out real quick, not the way that that happens.
Well, Joe, tell folks how they can find out more about you and find you on the virtual
Sure.
stuff.
So my website is joeperreta.com. It's two R's, one T. And my Instagram is at Joe Perreta. My TikTok is at Joe Perreta, although I really don't use TikTok as much, but add me on there anyway, because maybe it'll inspire me to post more there. And check out foreverfamilyfoundation.org too, because I do a lot. There's a lot of events that they do that I attend. I do the radio show if you want to hear that too. I also have a podcast that I have to really like get back to. I had a little upset with that situation, but it's called Ghost Daddy. It's like a silly little.
Oh, I like that name.
Yeah,
That's
maybe I'll
cool.
have you. Maybe you'll be my first guest back. Maybe I'll. Well, I don't know. I'll torture you on my podcast.
I'm down. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know about being by torture, but
No, I'm
yes,
kidding.
I'm
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 kidding.
down.
I'll harass you on there and get you to talk about things you probably don't want to.
I'm an open book too for the most part. So
Good,
listen,
good,
the
good,
things
good,
I've
good.
talked about on this podcast, yeah, but
All right, good. Because I incriminated myself in those episodes as well. It's like I shouldn't even be saying. My mother listens to this, but whatever.
well,
But yeah, that's
Joe,
where to find me. Joe Perreta. Google me. I'm around.
Thank you so much for being like super real and
Of course.
honest, and this was super fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a good time. Thanks.
If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.